I just got through doing a video, and it came, it's uploading now. Anyway, it came downstairs, and I've started to tape Fox News and also CNN in the morning, at least a couple of the shows. I guess I got lucky to tape this one. Fox News loves pushing these false narratives, and they can find people that support their false narratives. Now, they have this white woman who has written a book, Facts versus the Myths of Black Lives Matter. I want you to watch and listen to the bullshit that is put out here, with the understanding that Fox does not have to legally tell the truth on their television network. There was a court case which involved Bill O'Reilly, and the final disposition that the judge gave was that Fox News is under no obligation to tell the truth in its broadcast. And this is a prime example.
Black Lives Matter protesters operate on the belief that police officers are a threat to African Americans, but statistics show that that is not necessarily the case, and yet even some lawmakers are touting quite publicly that math. Watch.
It's more critical than ever that we reach a final agreement on police accountability and standards. At the time when African Americans are 30% more likely than whites to be pulled over while driving, more than 3 times more likely to have their car searched, and more than twice as likely to be shot by police, it is imperative that we restore public faith in our criminal justice system.
Now, I would have liked for him to have cited the source for the figures that he gave, but he didn't, and I guess they can be found. But now, here's Fox News pushing back and coming up with their own statistics.
Was from the testimony the other day, the congressman there, and Heather McDonald joins us now, senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute and the author of the book, The War on Cops, which she wrote, and also an op-ed in the editorial section of the Wall Street Journal that was titled The Myths of Black Lives Matter. So, Heather, welcome back to the program once again.
Thank you.
Since the last time you and I spoke, Dallas has happened. But I want to get you to address John Conyers' remarks there and very specific statistics, which certainly make it sound like black people are under a much greater threat from police officers in this country. Is that your truth, your finding?
Martha, that's a very dangerous lie. In fact, studies have shown that police officers are less likely to shoot armed black suspects than armed white suspects.
Okay, so I need to know what studies you're citing, because I'm going to take the word of a U.S. congressman citing certain facts, though it has been found that they can be in error as well, as proven by the senator who was trying to cite some bullshit facts when it came to Planned Parenthood, and it was discovered that those facts were lifted off of an anti-Planned Parenthood site that was citing bullshit facts.
There's a lot more armed black suspects out there, but in fact, confronted with the choice, officers hesitate much longer in deciding whether to shoot, and they shoot unarmed black men much less than they shoot unarmed white men.
Now, that is a bunch of bullshit. Number one, there are more white people out there with guns than black people, so that part is bullshit. And number two, if they hesitate to shoot black quote-unquote suspects, how is it that Tamir Rice got shot in less than 2 seconds and he wasn't even doing anything? And how is it that John Crawford got shot in approximately 2 seconds and he wasn't doing anything? Where was the hesitation there?
This false conceit that the police are somehow all become racist across the country.
Okay, now that's a false narrative, because the Black Lives Matter people have not said that all police have suddenly become racist. That is not true. What they have said is they want police to have accountability. Okay? Accountability. So if you're doing the right thing, we love you. If you're doing the wrong thing, you need to pay the price. That's what the Black Lives Matter movement is about. But Fox seems to always be able to find people that want to sprout a false narrative that the Black Lives Matter movement hates all police. That is not true.
After they become officers, is producing, as we can see, very dangerous anarchy in the streets.
You know, we saw the images as the protesters went out there in Dallas that evening. They were protesting the deaths of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling. And the police put out pictures of themselves standing right next to the protesters, protecting their right to protest. And then we all know the horrific scene and tragic, tragic loss that unfolded just hours after that.
Exactly. The Black Lives Matter people were protesting peacefully. I'm here in Dallas, by the way. The police obviously were monitoring the protesters and assisting where necessary. Everybody, the cops and the protesters, they were all having a good time, okay? There was no animosity that was reported. I can't say there wasn't any, but that was reported between the police and the protesters, okay? Everything was fine. As a matter of fact, the protest was over when Mr. Johnson struck out against the police and created the situation that we have now. And I'll say it again, he should not have done that, especially here in Dallas, because the police, they have come light years from where they were, light years. There has only been, I believe, one police shooting that was questionable, and I mean questionable. Now, I'm not counting the shooting that occurred in Arlington, where an Arlington police officer shot an unarmed black man that was vandalizing a auto dealership. And even then, I don't know what the final disposition was, but I know that the Arlington Police Department took action against that officer, and he was fired from his position, and he hadn't made his probation at the point that he killed that young man. But Dallas was the last, I don't know about the last, but Dallas would have been, or should have been, one of the last places that something like this went down. Now, if you're talking about in California, or in Florida, or even in Minnesota, or even in Louisiana, okay, fine. You know, that would be whatever it would be. But Dallas should not have been touched by this.
So your thoughts on what you saw happening on the streets in Dallas between the police officers and the protesters, and then what followed?
Well, it's not surprising, Martha, because this is not the first time that officers have been assassinated because of the inflammatory rhetoric and hatred directed at them by the Black Lives Matter movement and amplified by the White House. In December 2014, 2 officers in New York City were gunned down in cold blood, again, inspired by Black Lives Matter lies.
That's a bunch of bullshit. That guy was fucking deranged. He killed his girlfriend first, and then he went to New York and assassinated those 2 officers. And he was not prompted by Black Lives Matter. That guy was a fucking nut. Period. So for you, and it's just like every time a black guy happens to kill a police officer, you automatically want to associate it with the Black Lives Matter movement. Just like that situation down in Houston, Texas, where that black guy killed that police officer. They immediately tried to lump it in with the Black Lives Matter movement because of that chant that had taken place in Minneapolis. And the guy specifically told him that he was not part of the Black Lives Matter movement. He had nothing to do with them. So they finally had to drop it when his public comments were released. So this lady, I can't even call her a lady, this bitch is full of shit.
So rhetoric has consequences, ideas have consequences. If you continue to spread the myth that the greatest threat facing young black men today is police officers, and President Obama has...
Again, there's another lie. They are not spreading the myth that police officers are the #1 problem for young black men. They are not saying that. They are saying that bad cops need to be held accountable because the bad cops seem to be attacking young black men and women for that matter.
And things very close to that, not only before Dallas, but after Dallas, to my amazement. It's not surprising that people on the fringe are going to take that message seriously and seek vengeance. It would be one thing for President Obama to denounce criminal justice racism if we were living under Jim Crow, and if there was good...
If we were living under Jim Crow, see, this woman is dangerous. This woman is, and so is Fox. And Fox is consistently supporting people like this, and they're promoting people like this. This lady is lying. She's lying. Jim Crow still exists. It just exists in a slightly different form than it did in the 60s. But Jim Crow is still here.
Cause for that, but there is not. This is a fair system, and the police are in minority neighborhoods because that's where people are being victimized at astronomical rates.
What do you say to those who say that although there are more whites and Hispanics who are killed by police officers, that the percentage still skews towards young black men primarily, who are targeted unfairly, they believe, by police officers in some cases? And also speak to the fact that the fear that exists in the black community when they're confronted by police.
Well, being stopped by the police can be an infuriating and terrifying experience. There's no question about that. And police have to do everything they can to treat people with courtesy and respect. But it is not the case, Martha, that everybody in inner city communities is walking around terrified of the police. I was in a police community.
How do you know that? You're a white woman. Oh my, you really? Okay.
Community meeting in the South Bronx last summer, and a woman spontaneously burst out, "How lovely when we see the police. They are my friends." I've talked to people like Mrs. Sweeper, who said, "Please, Jesus, send more police." She's a cancer amputee who only feels safe to go into her lobby when the police are there, because otherwise there's kids trespassing, colonizing, and selling drugs and smoking weed. You have to understand police activity in the context of crime data. It's true. Blacks are 26% of all people fatally shot by the police. That's more than their representation in the population, but it is far less than their participation in violent crime rates. Blacks commit about 2/3 of all violent crime in the largest counties in this country, even though they're only 15% of the population. And it's calls for service that brings police into neighborhoods confronting armed and resisting suspects.
Heather McDonald, you've done a lot of research into this. There's also now a study out of Harvard that was a 15-year study as well that corroborates a lot of your work that you had worked on for many years. So we thank you very much, Heather, for being with us today.
I'm not sure about corroborating, and I'm not even sure that I even believe that she went up into the South Bronx unless she had an armed guard with her. All right, but I can tell you this, in my section of the South Bronx that I lived in for 17 years, the cops were not well thought of, and the cops didn't think well of the people in the areas. All right, and if the cops had done their jobs, i.e. Gone after the people that they should have, i.e. Certain gang members, things might have been a lot better. But of all the people that they screwed around with, the gang members were the last people that they went after, because they were in fear for their lives of retribution by the gang members, so they left them alone to do whatever they wanted to do. Fox at its finest.